Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. Where only the strongest roots see the light, brought to you by 𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗏 Candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please be sure to like this video, share it, comment, and if you haven't, please subscribe. What's up, Phil?
Hey, what's going on? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, brother. How's everything?
Life is life, and it's already half the year. It's over, and it's crazy. The 2024 is an awesome year so far. So
yeah, a lot of progress, a lot of things going on, a lot of movement. It has been a blur to a certain degree, especially with the way we stay working. You know, even with the channel and, all the progress we've made within recent times, it's wild to see.
Yep, but look forward to the future, man. So what's the topic for today?
The topic for today is an interesting one because the year in the Western world started in January, right? But they actually just pulled the letter of the year, or the Odu Agbaye as it's known, in Nigeria.
Wait, you saying the rest of the years is not like that? Everybody doesn't start January 1st?
No, absolutely not. So they pull their New Year letter in June. Or very, very late May, depending on the clans and things like that. But usually very, very early June. And it's done in a place in Nigeria known as Oke Itase. Now, the interesting thing about this place is Oke means a hill, right? Or mountain, but more like a hill. And they say that this was actually Orunmila's residence while on Earth. So it's a pretty epic place, and it's where basically all of the World Ifa festival happens, right? Where all of these different sacrifices are made and offerings, just to be able to kind of turn the wheels of the universe, to be able to do a revelation for the whole world. So as everyone knows, we're ultimately 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 practitioners, right? Or Afro-Cuban Creole practitioners, which is the base of our practice. I mean, we all practice Ifa no matter where we're from. So, I'm a fan of the letter that is pulled in Cuba by the Casona, or the Miguel Febles Commission. But I think it's very important also to take a look at what's going on the other side of the world and see how we can find comparables and things like that. Because earlier on in the year, we interpreted the Odu Agbaye or 𝗃𝗏𝗿𝗏, right?
Okay.
So, I always like to look at both. These are pretty much the two that I look at. There's other ones that come out in Nigeria as well, and they're all great. They're kind of going through the same thing we go through over here, where, there's a couple letters of the year over here, a couple over there. I think less over there ultimately. But it's always good to get these two huge comparables, because these were the two, kind of original ones. So it's always nice to compare, right? The Odu that was revealed, though, is a very grandiose one. It was Otura Ogbe, right? Also known as Otura Rico or Otura Orire. And this is an Odu that I've had a lot of personal experience with. It's one of the first ones that I studied. And ironically, when this Odu came out for me in my own personal annual divination, it was actually the year where I was actually able to procure the funds, me and my wife, to be able to open up the store. So I have an emotional connection to it, because I was able to progress quite a bit under it. It comes with the prophecy of Ayewo Arun, which means a negativity or a warning of sickness or deterioration. In the traditional practice of Isese, they kind of leave it open. They make a prophecy, a negativity of this or a positivity of this. And then at that point, it's really up to you to take the actions based on the recommendations of how you're going to be able to obtain the blessing or avoid the negativity, right? So when we look at this specific prophecy, to be frank with you, at least from a medical standpoint, this Odu can be a little bit destructive if we're not doing our 𝗏𝗶𝗍𝗏 and things like that, depending on whatever the person's customs are. Because I do believe that ultimately the recommendations that are made in the annual divination are more done by that commission or that organization on behalf of the world. But there are some people who choose to do it on a more personal level, which I guess is fine as well. But the most important thing is that, everybody's really spiritually up to par this year, because this is an Odu that if people are slipping a little bit, situations can arise, right? And the reason I say that is because Orunmila was actually being chased by the three worst negativities that have been identified within Ifa. And the negativities were Iku, or death, or lack of function, Arun, which was the one identified this year, sickness or deterioration, and Ofo, which means loss or to give without measure. And he was going through it because he wasn't able to really relax because, when these three things are after you, I mean, who has a life? So divination was performed for him on behalf of by other Babalawos on his behalf, and the Odu Agbaye Ogbe was revealed, where he was told to perform sacrifice, right? Specifically to a palm tree, right? Which actually is one of the processes that occurs in Africa when
how do you do that though?
Basically you sacrifice the animal to the palm trunk,
Okay.
of 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍, or the sacred palm tree of 𝗍𝗍, where we get the sacred seeds and are able to function. Without it, we wouldn't have a spirituality. So when Orunmila performed these sacrifices, the tree actually spoke to him and said, to what do I offer the pleasure? And he said, well, I'm in the midst of death, sickness, and loss, and I'm looking for options, and they told me to come see you. And at that point, the tree actually provided Orunmila with fronds, right? And the leaves from the tree. And the tree told him, based on his sacrifice, that wherever the tree was, Orunmila would not see death, sickness, or loss. So Orunmila, when he was going to perform an Ifa initiation for somebody, or some would even say himself, with other people performing the function for him, they hung this at the door. And when death, sickness, and loss tried to go across it, they couldn't. It was almost like a repellent. They were allergic to it, where they couldn't cross the palm fronds or the white curtain that covered the door. And because of it, in our consecratory rooms, neither death, sickness, or loss can penetrate. And that's why whenever an initiation is going to occur, or, you see this in Cuba a lot, where people just have this hanging from their door, they believe that it repels negativity, evil eyes, a lot of things that, you want to avoid. And this specific palm skirt is known as 𝗲𝗲𝗍𝗲. And 𝗲𝗲𝗍 is a compound word of three phrases, where 𝗲𝗲𝗍 means we shall not see the secrets, or we shall not see. And basically that gets hung wherever there's a consecration or an initiation happening, so that the uninitiated don't trek into, forbidden ground for them, right? So if we kind of look at what Ifa has divined for the world now, from the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 standpoint, with this Odu and prophecy, Orunmila here was, at a high predisposition towards getting sick or having his life deteriorate, And when you think about him and his business being Ifa initiation and Ifa work, it's kind of hard to be able to function when you have these three threats constantly pressing down upon you. So basically what Ifa is saying here is that people have to, get organized, do their ebo, incorporate whatever, things they need to into their routine in their home, so that we can avoid random instances of, sickness or any of these negativities, because this Odu unfortunately speaks about them very heavily. But if we perform ebo and we do what we need to do, at least the phenomenal aspects of it can be avoided. At the end of the day, if this is somebody's year, it's going to be their year, either positively or negatively. But what we're trying to always avoid, especially within Ifa practice, is all of the haphazard things that happen, because Ifa does have the concept that some people do go before time, or get sick unnecessarily. And, as time goes on, and depending on people's immune systems, especially after COVID, everybody's kind of on edge. So, we still have to kind of pay attention to that,
Okay.
So it speaks of that. So that's probably one of the key focal points for this year. Another aspect of health that Otura Ogbe speaks of is the nervous system, right? And I don't mean nervous system as like we're nervous or worried about things all the time, even though there can be effects of depression or anxiety or anything that we could be going through on various levels this year. It actually speaks of the nerves, throughout the body, because Otura Ogbe is also known as Otura Orire. So it really focuses on the head. So the word Oriko actually makes reference to a story where the Babalawo with this Odu was trying to learn things, right? Or really trying to find answers to things, better said. And he would constantly look to heaven to ask Olodumare for answers, and he would never get a response. So they say that he would literally hit his head against the wall, right? which is where the phrase 𝗃𝗀𝗃 comes from. Ori means head, and 𝗃 means, conflict or resistance, right? Or to hit. And he would hit his head against the wall, and obviously that's not going to last very long. So he became very frustrated and visited other Babalawos to be able to perform divination for him, where his own Odu was revealed, where they asked him what his habits were, and he told them, and they said, the answer to your questions is not written in heaven. The answer to your questions is within the sacred literature of Ifa through your own interpretation. And through his study of Ifa and acquiring patience and Iwa and all these different things, he was able to go from being known as Otura Oriko to Otura Orire, right? And Otura Orire means Otura has a blessed head, or the head is blessed. And what ended up happening is the complete change of his life and situation occurred, where, this Odu really identifies for all of the people on earth that if we're looking for answers, or if we're looking to have things resolved, we can't expect things to just fall out of the air, kind of like Otura Rico did. We need to study, we need to prepare ourselves, we need to educate ourselves. We can't take things at face value. We need to verify the professionals that we're contracting to clarify things for us. We need to even verify our government to a certain degree, because we can't just swallow what they give us. We have to be logical. We have to be scientific to a certain degree, and always have a system of checks and balances to be able to make sure that what we're being told is believable, right? Or worth believing. But this Odu speaks of the blessing that came from not only the initiation of Ifa with the first story, but the study of Ifa, where once again, Ifa is saying is if anybody has anything pending, this is an ideal year to make that happen. And then apart from that, remember that initiation is just the first step. The real initiation comes from the study of the literature, learning how to make it practical, also applicable, so that we can get the positive results out of it. Because initiation does provide benefits, but in the long run, it won't provide that much if we don't study and know how to utilize it. So this Odu speaks of that as well. So another thing that's actually in this Odu speaks of the importance of ancestor worship, or veneration to the Egungun or Oro cults, depending, which one the person is involved in. The reason being is because Otura Rico is identified as the captain of the masculine Egun, right? Or Egun Baba. And basically what occurred is in this sign, the person was experiencing difficulties. In some versions, his father or some masculine ancestor had just passed away, and they really didn't understand why. So they went to visit the Babalawos. Divination was performed. Otura Rico was revealed, where Ifa said they needed to perform sacrifice to Egun. And in this case, it was actually a rooster. Some people say it was a white one, where the person who has Otura Rico, not a bad thing to do on a semi-frequent basis. So they offered the rooster to the Egungun icon, which some say was consecrated in this Odu as well. And when they did, the spiritualities of their masculine ancestors actually arrived and, explained to them that they were the cause of this, not by intention, but due to, infrequency and disalignment. And if they continued this process of veneration, things were always going to progress for them, which they did, and we still do to this day. So this Odu speaks of the importance of ancestor worship being organized in our spiritual routines, and making sure we're accountable to all those people that came before us. But Otura Rico also has to be very careful and make sure that, their character and their Iwa is always in line, so that they don't suffer situations unnecessarily from an uncomfortable, possibly social standpoint. So that goes for all of us as a humanity. We can't forget where we come from, and a lot of frustration and obstacles can be coming from either a lack of attention to our ancestors or incorrect attention. So if we're unfamiliar on how to interact with that specific space, please get with your elders, and please, get up to speed, so that, those routines are happening, so that things are always in a state of progress.
How come I never heard of this?
Of what?
I can't pronounce it.
The sign? Otura Rico. Otura. It's also known as Otura Nico. One of the most important signs in the whole spirituality, in my humble opinion, because there's so many mysteries that were born here and so much information, and it's just a very grandiose Odu, especially with its connotations to the head. Some people would say that Otura Ogbe is one of the first Odus where Ori, or the head, became productive. So, such as interpretive thought, profound thought, theoretical, philosophical thought. All of those things kind of manifested here. Pretty popular sign. I think it's one of the signs that most reveals itself within the whole oracle, within the practice of Ifa. I've met so many people with this Odu. It's astonishing. Now, the reason probably being is because the person or the spirituality just, had an amazing start, from the dawn of time and just reincarnated over and over and over again. It comes with a lot of blessings, but, the negative aspect can be quite negative. So it's always important to remember that, a sign is only as good as the effort we put into it and the effort we put into understanding it,
Okay, I got it.
So, from a financial standpoint, because that's always on people's minds, right? This Odu speaks of a farmer, and the farmer was having a rough year that year. And this is one of the Odus where corn was first identified. It actually has a verse for it within it. Now, most people would say, hey, well, corn wasn't in Africa. Well, we really don't know that, so, but apart from that, if it wasn't there originally, it did come over. And there were experiences that happened with it. And this is one of those Odus. And the farmer was a little stressed out because he's like, I'm planting, I'm not getting the rains. There was a huge drought that was going on, which was the really big issue. And he went and visited Orunmila. And when the Odu of Otura Ogbe was revealed, Ifa told him to perform sacrifice, but on the day that he performed sacrifice, to not work. So he performed sacrifice that same day. But when he came home, it started raining. So the farmer was like, oh man, I got to take advantage of this opportunity and start planting. He completely ignored what Orunmila said. And right when he thought he was about to be done planting and come home, a bag of gold fell out of the sky onto his head and he died.
No way.
Yeah.
Gold,
calories, whatever you want to interpret, but it was money. It was something heavy enough to kill him, unfortunately. Where this Odu says, God has heard what you asked for, but always be careful what you ask for because you might get it sooner than you thought. If you look at what occurred here, the person was stressed out economically, and I think everybody's going through that right now. You kind of look at, on this side of the world at least, you look at interest rates, you look at what the Fed has going on, you look at our real estate market, elections coming up. People are pretty stressed out, because economically we haven't seen this in about a decade or so. So what this Odu is saying is that Ifa is here to provide options and salvation economically for anybody that seeks its help or assistance. But we have to make sure that we listen to the Babalawo and we listen to Ifa as well, because, the farmer really didn't want to visit the Babalawo. He didn't necessarily believe per se, but he needed a solution, which Orunmila provided. But the farmer, rather than following prescription through and, listening and having a certain level of humility, said the hell with Orula and started planting on the day that Orunmila told him not to, because he thought Orunmila was foolish for even giving him that piece of advice. When in reality, all Orunmila was trying to do was save his life. So Ifa says that...
did Orunmila know that was going to happen?
No, he didn't know that was going to happen, but he knew that Ifa told him, hey, when this Odu comes out and you perform a bowl, don't work. So let's say from a modern day expression, right? Let's say someone, visits the Babalawo. Hey, Padrino, I'm going to do a bowl this morning. Let's say we start the bowl early, which usually is in our case, unfortunately, with the way the schedule is. But, let's say we start at 11 a.m. and we're done, I don't know, you're home before 2, right? Now, let's say you're chilling at home. I've given you this advice, but all of a sudden your manager comes in like, hey, I have an overnight shift, that just opened up. I'll pay you, double overtime, whatever, a real big incentive. And you don't listen because you need money, which we all do and is understandable. But God forbid, let's say, on the way to, work or the way from work, you get in a fatal accident. So this Odu says that we have to allocate time. We have to be organized. We have to relax to a certain degree, because this Odu says that there's a sense of desperation that's happening within humanity right now that has to do with economics and finance that could cause people to put themselves in harm's way. You look at truckers, they're driving 24 hours a day. They probably shouldn't be behind the wheel. God forbid a doctor, overworked, exhausted. He's about to do 3 surgeries today. Like, we're really going through it right now with this Odu. And then on one aspect, it speaks of sickness, right? But the other aspect is deterioration. The Yorubas have this concept that when we are sick, all aspects of our life begin deteriorating. So if you're sick in a bed, like when I had COVID, I can't take care of my kids. I can't spend time with my wife. I can't work. I can't, mow the lawn. I can't do any of these things. My life begins deteriorating. So Ifa says in this Odu, we have to avoid deterioration. And one of the easiest ways for any adult human being to deteriorate right now is through overexhaustion from work, because people are working like crazy just trying to make ends meet. So it's very important to, grind it out, but at the same time, understand we are made of flesh and carbon. So rest is a very, very, very important thing here, especially when you look at the name of the sign, 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗍 𝗿. The head couldn't take it no more. It had way too much on it, on the mind. But the Odu speaks of the importance of following through with your recommendations, and not only that, following through with the advice. You can't risk yourself for work. And another thing is knowing that in this Odu, Otura Ogbe says that prayer is a very important thing, like taking the moment to have, first and foremost, a moment of gratitude. And then at that point, kind of go over the things mentally and plan and kind of have that moment of self introspection spiritually to connect with a higher being. Because in this sign was where Olodumare would receive prayers all day long. And, human beings would keep asking for the same thing over and over and over again, kind of like the farmer did. But when Olodumare actually sent it, either they were caught in a precarious position like the farmer, or they weren't ready, or they weren't appreciative. And Olodumare said, from that point forward, I work on my own time and on my own schedule, because, with these people, it's always back and forth. That's why this Odu says, God has heard your prayers. Stop asking for the same thing. So this Odu makes reference to the fact that we as a humanity right now and as a species, we're stressed out, But the most important thing is understanding that we've asked for what we've asked for. It's been heard. But in the meantime, we still have to work. We still have to, to a certain degree, sacrifice for our goals, because the Odu has a proverb that says, God helps people that help themselves. So this Odu speaks of the importance of productivity, staying in movement, not waiting for things. Kind of like when people come to Erica and they're like, yeah, we're going to wait to buy a home once the rates go down.
Heard that before.
That's what this Odu is making reference to. I don't really know when that's happening, and I don't know if they're ever going to go down.
It's never going down
to the delicious, point it was at before COVID, and COVID had more effects than just health and medical. So, this Odu is speaking about all of those things.
All right, so I got a question for you. Can the Odus actually change and evolve over time?
To a certain degree, yes. Ifa is alive, right? It's one of the most beautiful systems because, it can be added to, it can be augmented to a certain degree. For the most part, though, our literature has kind of been in place for, centuries, right? But what always changes is the prophecy. So, for example, if instead of 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁 Arun, the blessing or 𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗍 would have came, a blessing of health or a need of health, the conversation would be a little different, to the point where I would speak about different stories or maybe interpret in a different light. So that's where, we're kind of on this pendulum, and it's really based on the prophecy, because the prophecy is what allows us to find what part of the sign we really want to focus on, where if you noticed, I started off with health, sickness, avoiding, the importance of spirituality that aids in that, etc. But if we would have come 𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗍, or a blessing of money, I probably would have started with the story about the farmer, where the money fell out of heaven, literally. So it in that aspect, it can change. And, there have been additions. I mean, when you look at this Odu, it has a verse for corn. And, it's a hotly debated topic for some reason. Was corn in Africa before colonialism and all these different things? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But at the end of the day, there was a gentleman or a woman that ultimately experimented with corn and wrote a verse about it or a poetry about it. And, divinely it applies, So when you talk about divine inspiration and all those different things. So okay. Now that's finances, because money is a major issue. But, another thing that people are really, interested in is love, and companionship, and how is, the global terrain looking for, romance. And this Odu has a little bit of an uncomfortable story when it comes to that. In this sign, Orunmila had a gift, and his gift was that he could shapeshift into 7 different animals. And death didn't know his final form. So he was trying to find because in this sign, death is interpreted as a woman. She wanted to see how she could trick Orunmila into revealing the information willingly, so that she could, kill him. So one day she disguised as a beautiful woman, and Orunmila saw her, and they started courting, etc. And Orunmila introduced this woman, who he wanted to make his wife, to his mother. The mother was polite and things like that, but when she left, she urged Orunmila to not pursue a relationship with this woman. There was something not right about her. Unfortunately, though, after interacting with death in disguise, Orunmila's mother died. And some people say it was under the influence of death, trying to not allow Orunmila's mother to continue persuading him against the relationship. Neither here nor there. After that, Orunmila married death unknowingly, being that his mother wasn't there to oppose anymore, because in African culture, your mother's blessing is probably the most important one when it's time to get married as a man. And they started a relationship. And it says that they were together for going on 7 years before this epic part of the story happens, which is really scary that you can be around the enemy that long. And Orunmila had a habit of, after being intimate with his wife, he would begin to reveal things or speak or get emotional, right? And one night he decided to reveal to her his gift. And he said, I've never told you this, but I can turn into different animals. And she was like, get the hell out of here. And he was like, yeah. And he actually started morphing in front of her. So his first form, let's say, was an elephant. Second form was a crocodile. Third form was a leopard. Fourth form was a hawk. Fifth form was a hippo. Sixth form was a buffalo. And right when he was about to reveal the seventh form, the spirit of his mother actually went up in here and was like, you idiot, get out of there. And right at that moment, death revealed her true form and went to attack Orunmila, and Orunmila was able to save himself because he hadn't revealed the last form. And the last form, the book says, was a fly. And, Orunmila was able to escape because death didn't realize it, and, he was able to save himself. But there's some interesting innuendo in this sign. It explains why we have this natural desire to kill flies, because in this sign, death was always chasing the fly. And it also makes reference to why whenever there's death, a fly shows up first. And this Odu is where the decomposition of the body happened. But we'll get into that now. But when we look interpretively, this Odu speaks of the importance of self-preservation if we're talking about the decomposition, because luckily not everybody's going to transition this year, even though this Odu speaks heavily of that process. But there are ways to degenerate within ourselves. We have to eat a certain way. We have to be active a certain way. We have to sleep a certain way. We have to make sure that we're not deteriorating. Like this sign says, a negativity of deterioration, and decomposition is the deteriorating of flesh. And it could start even when we're alive. So Ifa says we have to be very careful with that. But from a romantic standpoint, going back originally, this Odu speaks of the importance of getting to know people before we decide to make a life with them. Ifa says the dating community at large could have a predisposition right now to move forward a little bit too quickly. And that could be a little dangerous, because we don't know other people until we allow time to reveal who they are, because time is the great, revealer. So you don't know that person's medical background. You don't know their psychological background. You have to get to know people, meet parents, if they're around, or if that's even the dynamic, or any way that you can kind of protect yourself. Because Orunmila was so focused on the physical aspect of things, which are important. You have to be physically attracted to your partner. But there's so many other things that go into attraction, when we're done with intimacy. What are we doing with all these other hours of the day? Are we able to converse? Do we have compatibility? Do we have similar viewpoints? Oh my God, we're having children. What religion are we going to expose them to? All of these different things. The Odu speaks of the importance of compatibility and the patience to allow it to reveal itself. But Ifa says in this Odu that, 99% of your happiness, well, maybe not 99, 95, 94% of your happiness is going to be based on who you procreate with or who you marry. And Orunmila here, after this situation, he became very jaded or traumatized. If you notice, that's why a fly doesn't trust anybody, because he was so hurt by his partner, or so worried about someone repeating those same actions. Flies don't interact with human beings. So Ifa says romantically, it's important to get to know each other. If we're already together, let's get to know each other again, because who I was yesterday is not who I'll be tomorrow. So it's very important to take that time and kind of have that moment of re-encounter with our partners, or even with ourselves within that relationship. And usually everything will turn out fine. But it speaks of the importance of family, and the unification, so that there can be happiness, peace, and tranquility within our homes.
Okay.
So it speaks of that. So we went over health. We went over money. We've gone over love. What else do people want to know about, Phil?
So health, their family, right?
Family, the family dynamic.
Yeah. Or their careers.
Careers, the professional aspect of things. Otura Ogbe was a very talented person. It's somebody that really was able to, learn whatever they wanted. This Odu speaks of the importance of refining Ori and molding Ori and polishing Ori in a way where we're able to utilize our skills and our knowledge to be able to accomplish our goals ultimately. And Otura Ogbe is one of the first Odus where the study of Ifa occurred. When we first opened the books of Ifa and scripture and learned and digested all of this information. There's actually a really interesting story when we talk about competency and learning and being able to have a really great effect on those around us. In this sign, it speaks of a character. His name was Sajoni, right? Sajoni. And it's interesting because they say that this young man was the son of Oduduwa, right? In some versions, it was his godfather. But either way, they were separated very young, whether it was after initiation or after birth, where I don't recall if Sajoni was taken away or if Oduduwa left. But either way, they were at a distance, right? So this young man, young Babalawo, went through his apprenticeship process, taking years, and he showed great aptitude. He learned Ifa. He was very practical within Ifa. He was results-based and oriented. His clients were satisfied. His reputation began to grow. And he heard, or a case was brought to him about something that was very critical happening in the next land where, a lot of the Babalawos were, kind of, fouling out or blanking out when it came to this situation about a man that had an affliction that they couldn't cure. So Sajoni, taking advantage of the opportunity, to try his luck at the situation and see what Ifa had to offer, went. And when he went, he was an older guy, and he performed divination for him, where the Odu Agbaye was revealed, where a bow was performed, different medicines, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, etc. And the guy healed, and he was able to stand, and he was able to function, and mentally his capacity returned. And, Sajoni asked him, he said, "Sir, what's your name?" And he said, "My name is Oduduwa." And, at that moment, Sajoni realized, oh my God, this is my father/godfather. And he didn't even recognize him because they had separated at such a young age. And when Sajoni revealed his name as Otura Ogbe, Oduduwa looked at him and said, "I think you're my son." And there was this huge moment of re-encounter, etc., where they kind of reconciled, but each of them lived in different lands. That seems to be the key point there. And Sajoni went about his way receiving Odua's blessing, and Odua ultimately lived out his life where he was and transitioned at some point. So if we talk about competency, right, especially with the undertones of family, Ifa says here that whatever we do, we have to learn. We have to really perfect and grow within. We have to become passionate about things here. Because if you look at this, man's story, he was ultimately an orphan, right? And he took advantage of the few resources he was able to procure or be given, and he made the most out of it, where he was able to have a career, where he was able to have a life. Ifa says that, at the end of the day, if we're not focused on anything and we're not trying to achieve something, we're just down here killing time. And this Odu speaks of the importance of making the most of time, because there's nothing worse than, time and talent wasted. So Ifa says here that professionally we can accomplish quite a bit if we get motivated again, if we get organized, if we become disciplined. I think with the things that we've been going through as a society within the last couple of years has really, drained people of that motivation, because part of them is thinking no matter what I do, I'm not going to get ahead anyway. Where that couldn't be further from the truth. We really have to ignore propaganda and getting too overly invested in the news and Twitter and TikTok. Even though we're on there, we love it.
Well, yeah, we gotta be though.
What I'm saying, but we have to be. But we're speaking positivity. I mean, it's so crazy because someone came up to me one time. I was considering a career path, and we were talking about it, and I said, yeah, but I spoke to a guy that's involved, and he told me it was horrible, and it was dead. It was a dead science, and and the guy looked at me. He said, of course he's going to tell you that. He doesn't want any competition.
Mm.
So yeah, don't become a real estate professional. It's horrible. It's dead. Yeah, they don't want you to make no money. Don't become a Babalawo. It's dead. Yeah,
I hear that with podcasting too.
The podcasting,
Yeah.
but YouTube's dead. Everything's dead. But mind you, we're having more viewership. Statistics are saying the complete opposite. So this Odu says, do whatever you want, regardless of whether you think it's popping or not. Because at the end of the day, when you provide craftsmanship and competency and something that separates you from others, people are going to find value in you. To be able to do that, though, you have to find value in yourself first and invest that time, energy, and funds into honing that blade. This Odu speaks of the importance of that, where people don't want to work, and I can't blame them, because when you work a whole life and then COVID happens and you're like, oh my God, I have nothing, nobody's helping me. I'm working 80 hours a week. I can barely make ends meet. It's scary, but it speaks of the importance of entrepreneurship to a certain degree, because no one is meant to work for somebody else forever. So this Odu speaks of, even if it's not tomorrow or a year from now, everybody has to be looking at how can I become financially or socially independent to a certain degree, because we're all meant for that in some facet. So it speaks of that. But it also speaks of the importance of, not only craftsmanship, but spirituality within our home. Sajoni was able to save his father's life here, based on his skill. I'll never forget when my grandmother was sick, the gratification that it would bring me being able to divine for her and perform sacrifice on her behalf. And unfortunately, everybody has to transition, but I do believe Ifa gave me her, for an extra 2 to 3 years. And for anybody that's loved somebody that has left us, that what wouldn't you give for a second? So it's very important, whether it's Ifa, whether you're a physician, whether you're a financier, whatever you are, use your skills to benefit your home. Use your skills to help the people that help you, to provide a great example and an outlet for your children, your partner, etc. So I think Sajoni is a testament to that, because he was able to, ultimately help and save his family. So
how do you spell Sajoni?
Sajoni.
Okay, I'll remember that when I'm cutting the clips.
Yeah. No, it was a beautiful story. Because the guy, and he didn't even accept payment for it. The gratification was just helping his father, And once again, you go back to the theme of the masculine ancestors. What I love about the Odus of Ifa is there's always threads. Like within a story or multiple stories, you can see common themes, and there'll be multiple ones, like filial obligation to those that are paternal to us, the spiritual aspect of things, the health aspect with the nervous system and the body. This Odu also speaks against overambitiousness.
I was just about to actually ask you about that.
Yeah, and people are too ambitious now, and most people now online or on social media, like you can't be too ambitious. You can only sleep 4 hours a day. You got to work out 3 hours a day out of that. You can't eat any bread whatsoever. Everything has to be perfect. Don't have kids. Don't have a wife. Don't all this nonsense. People are a little too ambitious right now. And the reason, I'm not saying that the impression of life up until this point has been perfectly presented, because having a family is not easy. Being healthy is not easy. All of these different things that are worthwhile are not easy by any means. And they've been presented that way. I think in education, I think it would be a little more ideal if we can get a little more honest, especially with adolescents, about what life is. This is what you're looking at financially. socially, to be able to, the ramifications of childbirth and having a relationship and establishing a home, especially as they get later into high school and ultimately college, real life skills. But we're not really seeing that now. So when people actually get, presented to the real world and they're kind of kicked out of the nest, they're like, oh my God, this is what it really is. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of uncomfortability. And there's a story about that here where Orunmila, in this sign, apart from being a Babalawo, he was also a fencer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the sport fencing.
Yeah, the sword fighting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That was born in the Odu Otura Ogbe. It's known as it's the Cuban Spanish. I can't say an S. 𝗃𝗃𝗍𝗃. And basically what occurred is Orunmila took on a pupil, and the pupil started learning that martial art very quickly and very competently. And he started growing and growing and growing in skill. And Orunmila, was very proud of his student. But one day he went for divination in one place, and his student went for divination in another. The student, when he went for divination, the Odu Otura Ogbe was revealed, where Ifa told him to not be ambitious and to perform sacrifice, most importantly of 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, or good character, to never, basically threaten his life. The student didn't either, Now, Orunmila, when he went for divination, the same Odu was revealed, where Ifa told him to perform sacrifice to avoid a premature death and to never teach everybody everything or anybody everything.
How come?
And here we go. And that was really difficult for Orunmila because he was a real teacher in the sense of the word. He really wanted to invest, but he was always faithful and obedient to Ifa. So one day, he was actually sparring with somebody, and his student, who had won a couple tournaments and things like that, challenged his teacher to the death. And Orunmila looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And he said, No, I'm ready now. There can't be two masters, one of us has to go. And Orunmila begged the student to go through the shame of taking his offer back, but the student didn't, because back then that actually meant something. Like when you would pop off on somebody and be like, I challenge you to a duel, somebody was going to die. It's not like now on Instagram where you see somebody talking crazy and then nothing happens. So Orunmila was sad, but he said, well, this is what it is. So he said, on guard. And the duel commenced. And Orunmila saw the move his student was trying to set up, and it was a kill shot. And Orunmila was, he was going through the internal battle of, I may have to kill this kid. And when the kid went for the shot, Orunmila never taught him the parry or the movement to get out of the way to set up for a counter shot. And when it happened, Orunmila had to kill him because it left him in a position where if he didn't, this guy was going to recover, the student was going to recover, and he was going to kill him. So Orunmila tapped him in the chest, right? So when he got him, the kid collapsed. He was basically dying, and the kid looked at him and he said, "You never taught me that one." And Orunmila said, "I'm happy I didn't."
Wow.
And the student died right in front of him. So it's known as el pataquí de la grimita, or the esgrimista. And basically what happened was, in this Odu, Ifa basically had to withhold information based on the person's maturity level or prep. So this Odu says there's a dynamic that's occurring here. For all of those that, have gone through the rigorous training and shown loyalty and obligation to their teachers and have been able to establish their own spiritual homes or businesses or whatever, even if it's not spiritual, in nature, understand that, we have to gauge the people coming up under us, their preparation level, because not everybody's ready for all the information at once. Like when I do Ifa to my guys or I give hand of Ifa to people, I bombard them with a lot of information, but I understand that based on their rank or steps, they might not be ready for all of it. So I can't give them all of it because I'm going to drown them, right? Orunmila here made a little bit of an incorrect decision in providing his pupil too much too soon, because it caused this energy of overambitiousness or, basically treachery within him, thinking, I could, now that I've learned all of this, I could eliminate my master, right? And the greatest honor is to serve one's master or, one's teacher to a certain degree. Like even the people that taught me, when I see them, I take a knee, You know what I'm saying? Just out of respect, because no matter whatever I become within Ifa or whatever anybody comes within their discipline, we would not be here without our parents and our teachers and our mentors. So in this sign, for all of those who consider themselves a mentor, a teacher, or a guide, understand that that has to be gauged, and that has to be, taken into account little by little, so that we're not setting people up for failure by vetting them little by little. And unfortunately, there's always something, and even if it's not intentional, there's always something we're going to know that our students don't know. There's going to be things they know that we don't know. But there always has to be that contingency, because 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍 says, even though we're not interpreting 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍, Otura Ogbe says it as well, you're as necessary as much as you know. So there always has to be something that you're able to provide, because if not, then you're really not in that role of teacher anymore, So it speaks of that. But from another standpoint, for all of those that are trying to learn something, for all of those that are trying to grow, and you see so much of it now where people have this instant gratification complex where I want to know everything right now, or I don't want to, sacrifice to learn anything from you, or they basically are to the face like, I want to learn everything you know, and then I'm going to try to compete with you. Like, this makes no sense. No one wants to generate competition for themselves. Now, I will say this, though. Let's say I have a godson that we've spent years together. He's been wonderful, not only in his studies, but his conduct and his treatment of our home and our spiritual home. That man or woman has every right to set up their own establishment once they've fulfilled all the prerequisites. And I wish them well. And the beautiful thing about it is understanding that there's really competition only arises within the hearts of those who want it, because there's so much demographic to be able to attend to here. There's no reason for a Babalawo to be competing with another spiritual professional for a client. There's literally millions of people that practice this spirituality that aren't initiated, that want to learn or just be treated, etc., or attended to. If you want to compete, you're going to find competition, but it's like Otura Ogbe says, this is how competition can end, because there's a lot of emotions. There could be a little immaturity there. We start getting into religious warfare, we could really hurt each other. So Ifa says there can be none of that, and that needs to stop. So there needs to be obligation from student to teacher. And then overall, even if it's not in that context, just in general, if you want to learn about any kind of discipline or any kind of trade, have patience. Because, if we grow too quickly, we could drown ourselves. So you see a lot of that now, especially online, where, take this course and you're a professional, or take this and you're a master, or take, you see it all the time with like these motivational channels, like, oh, buy this package. And then, when you buy that package, then there's another package, and, all this.
Oh man, that's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Everybody's, doing something for a premium, and if it's legitimate information and there's that time that goes in, sure. But don't sell people a dream, and also don't allow yourself to be sold a dream, because a lot of people don't want to accept that to be good at something, to be decent at something, it's going to take you probably 10 years.
You heard about the 10,000 hours, right?
Yeah, 10,000 hours. I think that was Bruce Lee, or that's a martial art concept. That's real. That's really real, and people, there's so much anxiety now socially, where people are like, we don't have a lot of time, or people, we're living longer now than ever before. It's not about how long you're going to live, though. It's about what are you doing with the time that's been given to you. And the majority of people, they don't want to feel pain. They don't want to sacrifice. They don't want to go through that. And I don't know if it was COVID, or I don't know if it's just been brewing for a couple generations, but people really don't want to do anything. And this Odu speaks of the huge taboo that is. You have to do something, and then apart from that, you have to do it well, so that you can't only positively affect your home, but you have to affect society at large in a positive way. If we're going to be able to progress and get out of these situations, because whether it's politically, whether it's socially, whether it's medically, this Odu is saying we could be doing a little better. So.
Wow. Okay, I mean, this was definitely a refreshing episode. I mean, I think this one touches a lot of modern things.
Yeah, no.
A lot of modern stuff.
Otura Ogbe is a very applicable Odu, and it really goes back to that central theme of it all descends from the head. Everything starts in our mind, the power of the mind. All actions began with a thought, hopefully. So this Odu,
hopefully.
I don't know anymore, but, this Odu says that's why we have to refine our mind. That's why, the importance of invoking Ori, constructively, knowing how to do it. to really have that moment of re-encounter and realignment where if our head is if it's going in a good direction, there's no reason our feet shouldn't follow. So Ifa in this Odu says, let's refine our mind, let's clean up the way we think, let's be moral, let's be ethical, let's be kind, let's be loving, and let's be disciplined. And if we combine all of these things within ourselves, and then ultimately as a society, a species, we'll be able to make some real progress this year. If not, we'll be having the same conversation, if not worse, next year. But I have good expectations, and I expect good things, and that's one thing. Can't lose faith in humanity, because we're still here.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that we can't ever lose faith in. Do you want to know what that is?
Oh, don't tell me it's shout outs. Eso.
That's right, guys. It's favorite time of the show.
Awesome.
If you're wondering what this is, we give shout outs to people who show love to the channel by becoming a member. It's real simple. All you have to do is click on that join button right under this video. And we have 3 separate tiers, each offering, its own different perks and separate things. So let's go show some love to the people who show love to you.
Here we go.
Here's some VIPs.
Bips.
We got Fresh to Death.
Oh, man. OG.
They just upgraded.
Oh, thank you.
Props to them.
Thank you.
We got Jesus Sanchez or Jesus Sanchez.
Thank you, Jesus.
We got Lala Rocks celebrating 15 months as a VIP.
Lala, thank you so much. You're the best.
We got Love 'em Aaron.
Thank you.
We got super fans here. Now we got Joseph Gutierrez.
Oh, Joseph.
Sublime Prince BW.
Oh, yeah.
And celebrating 13 months, we got 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲.
Gilly, thank you so much. Thank you to all of the members. You are the best part of our Roots podcast and 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗃 got candles and more. If you know somebody that can gain some value from the channel, let them know about the channel and let them know about the membership program where they can find exclusive content about things we don't talk about regularly on the show. A couple closing thoughts before we go ahead and disconnect. 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗃 got candles and more.com is up and running for all services and product needs. We do ship. If you can't catch the podcast on YouTube, be sure to listen to us on all of those major platforms. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. A big thank you from all of us. And until next time, see the light.